everybody, it's Old School Nerd. How you doing? Yeah, you know who that guy is. I know who that guy is. But did you know that he and I have a lot in common and a lot not in common? Yeah. And a lot of people have asked me, hey, Old School Nerd, why have you not done a reaction to The Fat Electrician? And there's a very easy reason for that. You can't react to something you've seen all of them. Going all the way back to the proportional response video, I've seen every video that Fat Electrician has created. All of them, including the Fat Files, where he talks about, you know, Waffle House, which is one of my favorite videos. Things like that, okay? There are things that he and I have in common. Number one, his real name is not the Fat Electrician. My real name is not Old School Nerd. We are both known for our one-liners and our comedic sensibilities. We're both veterans, but there are some differences. We also, we're very verbose. We're very, it seems like we're the center of the universe, you know, like we start a conversation and everything, you know, like we're the masters of our universe until our wives walk in the room. I'm safe for now. But there are things that are very different about us. Number one, our channels are very different. I do reactions to music. He does reactions and historical, informative comedy videos about military history and pop culture history. And how we do it is very different. Fat Electrician does massive amounts of research. Exhaustive research. He becomes the authority on the subject he's going to talk about, composes all of his facts, creates amazing content, edits it very well, and then presents a polished, hilarious, wonderfully composed video that takes someone like myself who loves history and military history and goes, wow, I didn't even know that. That happens a lot. And he does it with hilarity and jokes that, yeah, amazingly hilarious jokes. I do videos with no research. I don't know anything about the bands beforehand. I do an honest, real reaction. I film it from beginning to end. I do no edits, no cuts. If I make a mistake, it's the way it is. That's the whole point, okay? So we do two totally different methods in our content creation, but we both have a lot of things in common. Beard work is one of them. A safe and healthy fear of our wives, obviously. We're both veterans. However, I am pre-9/11 veteran. So my combat experience is different than his. His is post 9/11, so there's an active war on terror, and the chaos from 2001 to present day, the op tempo, the equipment, the mission, rules of engagement, those situations are completely different than pre 9/11. It's not just TSA and taking your fucking shoes off at the TSA security checkpoint at the airport that's changed. Everything changes, okay? I'm pre 9/11 in my military service, but I did serve in peacekeeping missions in Kosovo. I was a combat medic. I was a combat flight medic. I was also in 101 air assault qualified flight dust off. Now, for those in the military, you know what a dust-off is? That's your medevac, okay? For those, yeah. So, non-combatant, but not really. So, I actually came out of the military. I went into my inactive reserve phase in 1999. And you have 2 years of inactive reserve. And my final inactive reserve month was July 2001, and then I was separated. At the time that 9/11 happened, I was almost immediately I was contacted. It's 9/11, 2001. Hey, so-and-so, roll school nerd. They didn't call me that. Your record, service record, qualifications, certifications, everything you need, medical, dust off, we need that. Would you be willing to come back? I'd have to get retrained. I don't know. And I just had my first daughter. My child was like 6 months old. I'm sorry, a year and a half old. My brain's, she was a year and a half old. And I was kind of working on something. And I declined to go back, but I still served in a different way. So I transferred, I went from active military service in medical support to VSAT secured satellite communications. I became a communications VSAT engineer, which was also much needed. Communications overseas, satellite secure communications. But I was civilian contracted and did a lot of work in Afghanistan and other places for that. So I served, but in a different capacity. But a lot of when I watch Fat Electrician's content, his videos, he talks a lot about the historical stuff. And a lot of that stuff I'm totally into. When he's in his podcasts and different things where they're talking about current op tempo, current op strategies and events, some of the stuff they're talking about, the equipment and MOS changes, I'm unfamiliar with because I'm pre 9/11. Okay. All right. My dad served in Vietnam. My grandfather served, my uncle, my great uncle, and my grandfather both did things in World War II. So some of the stuff he talks about, I totally zone in on. Audie Murphy is the video that this is about. For those who do not know, Audie Murphy is 100% probably the greatest American military service member of all time. I know that there are people that have done crazier things than Audie Murphy, but to imagine that not only do you do all these things, you become a national hero, but then they cut a movie about you and you play yourself. Like, wait, okay, yeah, that actually happened. There's a lot of stuff about Audie Murphy I know. That's not what I'm going to be looking for. If the Fat Electrician says something about Audie Murphy, his life, his legacy, the events of his life that I did not know, I will stop it and tell you, oh, I didn't know that. Holy crap. And I have a feeling it's going to happen a lot. Are you ready? You're not? But I'm going to try not to stop it that much, but you'll know by my eyes that I'm thinking about stuff. You ready? Here we go. My first ever actual reaction to the real Captain America, Audie Murphy, with the Fat Electrician.
I'm gonna be honest, I've avoided making this video for years because it's one of the biggest names in American military history, and I figured surely there's already a ton of videos on the guy, so I'm not sure I need to make another one. But then when I look on YouTube for the videos, there's only like a couple.
There's a reason for that. Audie Murphy's legacy is encapsulated by Hollywood. There's not a lot of videos because his life is so well documented. There's no reason to make a video like, oh, I discovered this guy that nobody knew about. Like when you talk a lot about Bastion, or you talk about the Green Beret in Vietnam, you know, or different characters, or, you know, the mule that carried ammunition in the Korean War. All these different things, or the combat duck, right? So all these different things that the Fat Electrician makes video. Dude, I'm so sorry. That's the shittiest stopping thing I've ever done. I think one of the reasons why Audie Murphy, you don't see a lot of YouTube videos about him, is his story is so exhaustively known in movies, TV shows, History Channel documentaries, etc., etc., etc. There's like 20 books about the guy. Autobiographies, biographies. So his story is so well known, you don't see a lot of people trying. But if anyone could come up with stuff we didn't know about this guy, it's going to be the Fat Electrician. Let's go.
Real-life Captain America. You know, Captain America, Steve Rogers, the Marvel superhero that was originally too small to serve in the United States Army until he was given a super serum and becoming the best soldier the U.S. military had to offer.
That is America's ass.
Audie Murphy is pretty much the exact same thing in real life, except there was no super serum. He was originally rejected by the Marine Corps and the paratroopers because he was only 5'4", 110 pounds. He would then eventually find a regular Army recruiter that was willing to round him up, saying that he was 5'5", 112 pounds, the exact cutoff for the minimum height weight requirement to join the US military. Despite his small stature and lack of super serum, he would go on to become the most decorated soldier of World War II, credited with killing approximately 240 enemies.
All right, seriously, yeah, that is his shadow box. Dude, that's ridiculous. That is ridiculous and a half. Also, Silver Star, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, and then all the other ones, but let's not forget this one right here. That's the big one. That's the Medal of Honor. Here's the thing. His bayonet is expert. His rifle is barely qualified. But yet he's known, you know. Okay, real quick. One of the things that he talked about was Audie Murphy's stature being so low. Haven't we noticed a common theme in all of his videos and military history? You don't have to be this mega athlete, big, strong, powerful, to become a hero. Like, my dad was in special operations. He was a UDT. He did do work in SEAL Team 2, but he was in the special boat division. The patrol boats in Vietnam. And one of the things he talked about was some of the scariest SEALs and special force operators he ever met look like the guy that was probably picked on in high school. I don't know what it is. I think it's because they're used to being underdogs that special operations is just a day for them. They're used to the challenges of life. Nothing comes easy to them. So the things that special operations requires is just how it is normally. Nothing comes easy. Sorry.
Approximately 240 enemies. In the process, earning himself the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars that he earned in the span of 3 days, 2 Bronze Stars with E-Device, 2 French Croix de Guerre, and the French Legion of Honor. He would then go on to become a national icon and Hollywood movie star, where he got to portray himself in his own movie about him, and Hollywood made him tone down the story because what he actually did seemed too unrealistic. He was the inspiration for one of the greatest Americans of all time, Master Sergeant Roy Benavidez, to join the Army. In the movie Fury, Brad Pitt, the main character, is based off of Lafayette War Daddy Poole, one of the greatest American tankers of all time, but the final battle scene is actually based on the exploits of Audie Murphy. And
that's right. Okay, all these things that he's talking about, please go to Fat Electrician's channel. If you've never heard of the Fat Electrician, number one, how? Number two, all these different videos about War Daddy, about different characters in military history and their stories are captivating. He talks about them. He has so many videos about this stuff. But yes, I figured he would pick up on the fact that the movie Fury was a combination of War Daddy and Audie Murphy together.
The comic book character predates Audie Murphy's military career. When he was brought back and revived in the 1950s and 60s, it's very obvious that Audie Murphy was the framework that developed that character. If you're not picking up what I'm putting down, I'm trying to tell you that you already know about Audie Murphy, whether you realize it or not, but you're about to learn a lot more right after a word from our sponsor.
Delete me.
What is...
See, I'm glad that my wife is not heavily armed. That's a problem he has. Yeah. He loves his wife so much that he's willing to put her on the camera and let her buy nice things. Actually, I think she lets him buy nice things when he's good, which isn't often. I don't know why he arms his wife like that. That's just not something I want to do. Dude, love her forever and don't fuck around, because I'm afraid you would find out. Yeah. Yeah, with everything else he does, that's the one thing he should never fuck up.
That.
I don't know. You told me to be here, so I'm here.
Fair enough. It's my new 1301, but now it's a write-off.
Hmm.
Love you.
See?
I do that shit a lot. I'll have Chelsea, my wife, come into a video for some reason, and then when she realizes it was just for some stupid reason, she gives me the same look. Odds are, by the way, another thing, Tank, holy shit. True. Another thing that Fat Electrician and I have in common is that anytime our wives are in our videos, we get more views. Please don't nobody tell her that. Actually, no, she already knows. Let's go.
You see? Oh, you don't see it?
But now it's a
Right
write-off.
there! Coincidence? I think not.
All right, here's the deal. Super simple, straightforward business model. You give them money, they turn around and make sure that data brokers on the internet aren't selling your personal information. What does that even mean? Okay, here's the entire internet and every free service on the planet inside of a nutshell, okay? There's a saying, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. What that means is pretty much anything on the internet that you use, that's a service, whether that be Google, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all of it, okay? It's all an app, so one of two things is happening. They're either gonna feed you ads, and that's how that company makes money since their service is free, or they're gonna collect your personal.
You ever notice how every time you go onto Instagram and you try to like look at something or you even talk to your phone, all of a sudden you have every video on your feed is about that? Exactly. Now you're asking yourself, old school nerd, isn't this your reaction? Why are you showing his sponsor? It's not your sponsor, it's his sponsor. If I'm gonna do a reaction to the guy, the least I can do is tell you, hey, go to delete me, get 20% off and put electrician as your code word. Why? Because the guy that tells funny historical stories said so. That's why. Duh. Let's move on. Yeah, he's gonna, let's go.
In Hunt County, Texas, as the 7th of 12 kids. His family is so
What?
poor and his parents are cranking out kids so fast that when he's originally born, they don't even have a name for him, so they just named him after the neighbor that helped with the delivery. Audie spent his childhood growing up on a cotton farm where his parents were sharecroppers, meaning they just rented the land, they didn't actually own it. And they grew up extremely poor. When Audie Murphy was in school, he ended up getting the nickname Little Britches because he would frequently outgrow his pants and they didn't really fit him. And like many other war heroes we've talked about, he became an excellent marksman at a really young age because he quite literally had to get food. He started off by killing rabbits by throwing rocks at them, then he graduated to a slingshot, and then he graduated to a .22 rifle. The first time he had ever went on a formal.
Okay, I'm sorry I'm stopping again, but only for a moment. This is not the first time, the second time, or let's be honest, the 8th time we've seen a video with this guy talking to us about a person who historically was a crack shot marksman, sharpshooter, not because he learned it in the military, but because he needed to eat during the Great Depression. It was just a different time.
hunting trip with adults, the adults are like, oh, it's just, you know, a little 7-year-old kid with his .22 rifle. Go ahead, kid, go up the hill and shoot at some birds, have fun. Audie Murphy goes up the hill out of the eyesight of the adults, and what they hear from the bottom of the hill sounds like a battle scene unfolding, and by the time they get to where Audie is, he is surrounded by dead doves and he has exceeded the state limit in a matter of minutes. Reflecting on his marksmanship abilities later in life, he simply said, if I missed, I didn't eat and I couldn't afford more bullets. By the time he was 13, he would drop out of school to work full-time to help out his family, which was a constant struggle because his dad was more or less an absent father that struggled with alcoholism. He would go on drinking benders and disappear for days on end. By the time he was 15, his dad would walk out the door one day and never return, leaving his mother and 12 kids to fend for themselves. Reflecting on this later in life, Audie said, and I quote, every time my old man couldn't feed the kids he had, he got himself another one. I suppose I hated him because I hate anyone who quits. Audie Murphy, on the other hand, doesn't quit. He starts working full-time for other farmers, even going and living with them, working for $1 a day. He works at the gas station. He works at the grocery store. He tries to be a radio repair guy. He does anything and everything he can at 13, 14, and 15 years old, trying to make enough money to help support his family. And
another common theme of heroes of yesteryear, not exactly born into, you know, not exactly Donald Trump level, right? Not exactly a Kennedy, you know? I mean, don't get me wrong, JFK did some pretty awesome things on that PT boat, but have you noticed how some of the most historically incredible humans who do superhuman things come from non-superhuman origins. They become that way through hardship. It's a common theme, man. I challenge you to go through videos from Fat Electrician and not notice that.
And at 15 years old, his mother gets sick and she passes away.
Of course she did.
He's working his ass off, doing everything he can for his family. And then at 16 years old, the movie Sergeant York, based off of the World War I superhero Alvin York, comes out in theaters, and he falls in love with this movie. He watches it twice and he decides he wants to join the military too. So at the age of 16, he goes to the Marines. They reject him for being too small. He goes to the Army paratroopers. They reject him for being too small. He goes to the Navy. They reject him for being too small. But he just keeps trying, and eventually, right after his 17th birthday, his sister forges the paperwork giving him permission to go off and join the military, and they fudge his height weight, and he ends up getting in. And by this point in time, a lot of his older siblings had moved on and started families of their own, and he was kind of the oldest sibling taking care of his 5 younger siblings, and he had no option at this point but to send them off to an orphanage. But unlike his father, he's gonna come back for him, because Audie Murphy doesn't quit.
Of course.
Audie Murphy goes off to training, is rapidly given the nickname Baby, Babyface, Shorty. Despite that, he crushes it, is absolutely the best shot around. While on leave one weekend, he goes out to a local carnival. They've got, you know, all the carnival games set up, and there's one of these tents that has a .22 rifle set up, and the challenge is to be able to shoot all the hearts off of a playing card, and it's the number 5. Audie Murphy walks up and from 30 yards away with the .22, puts a bullet dead center through every heart on the number 5 playing card.
This motherfucker don't miss.
No, the thing about it is that's extremely hard. So think about the distance, okay? Now, I know you're thinking, some people are like, oh, it's not 100 yards, it's not 300 yards, it's not 150 yards. You're talking about a 22 and a playing card, and not just hitting the playing card. We're going to hit 5 shots in that 5 pattern. It's ridiculous. That's ridiculously hard.
He's fucking good.
That motherfucker don't miss, man.
He's good.
In the heat of battle, he don't miss.
No.
The man running the booth then refuses to give Audie Murphy his grand prize of $25, which in 1942 is a ton of money. So Audie goes to his commanding officer, explains what happened. Commanding officer's pissed off, like, if my soldier's such a good shot, he won, then he won. That's all there is to it. So they go to the carnival, basically tell the carnival, like, hey, you're gonna pay our soldier his grand prize, or we're gonna make it so nobody from the military base can come to this carnival at all. So they reluctantly give him his money, but then they ban Audie from any shooting games, period. By late 1942, he's sent to Camp Meade and then Camp Kilmer, and then by February of 1943, he boards a ship and is sent off to war. First place he winds up is in Lacarta, Italy, and while he's there, he wants to lead from the front. He wants to be in the action. He's leading a patrol, and they end up coming across 2 German forward observers. Audie ends up spotting them first because this is what he did growing up. He hunted squirrels and doves and all these other small animals. If there's a single leaf wrong on a tree or a bush, he sees it. If there's a twig that snaps off in the distance, he hears it. So they start making their way towards this German position. The Germans know they've been spotted, so they turn, they stand up, and they start running. Audie drops down to one knee and shoots both of them dead on the spot. These were the first men that Audie Murphy killed in combat, and he said he didn't feel pride or shame. He just felt a weary indifference. Quote, they would have killed us if they had the chance. That's our job. A couple of days later, Audie Murphy's platoon is maneuvering, and they end up getting pinned down and ambushed by a German machine gun position, and they are just pinned down, and they're pinned down, and there's absolutely nothing they can do. Eventually, morale starts breaking down. You gotta realize these guys are fresh off the boat. They just got into combat, and some of these guys are freaking out, thinking they're gonna die. They're a bunch of kids. A couple of dudes are sobbing in the corner, and Audie Murphy's just like, fuck it, I don't quit. I guess I'm just gonna don my plot armor and handle this shit myself. Audie Murphy gets up and—
Okay, plot armor is something that Fat Electrician uses a lot. For those who do not know what that means, okay? There's something about all of these different historical people throughout history. Now, granted, these are the unique situations. Anybody else, and he's seen it in real life, I've seen it in real life, most of the time, guy's gonna die. Doing regular stuff, you get hit. IED, sniper hit, bad luck, happens to all the time. Bad situations can occur, and sometimes shit happens. Happens a lot. But every once in a while, there's a guy that just walks through raindrops. Like, he could walk through a rainstorm and not a drop of rain will hit this guy. And you're like, how the plot armor? It's not a great story. He wouldn't be a world, he wouldn't be an American hero for over 100 years now if everything didn't go right despite everything around him. Like there's you don't need body armor if you have plot armor. We don't know how these different historical figures do what they do and get away with it for as long as they do. He refers to it as plot armor. And before Fat Electrician used that term plot armor, it didn't really sink into me that what makes all of these stories and these historical figures so amazing is the ridiculous amount of things they do. I'm on, like Nasty McNeese. Really? The crap that dude pulled off before he even got to World War II. He should have been in jail or dead way before he even saw his first German soldier or dropped in before D-Day. Yet, I don't know how it works, but plot armor is the best term I've ever heard anyone use to describe the ridiculous amounts of sheer luck that happens. It just, these guys aren't even trying, and they just get away with shit.
And rushes the machine gun position by himself, screaming at his men to follow as he breaks through the ambush and destroys the position. For this, he would get promoted to corporal, and reflecting on this later in life, he would say that retreating is the most dangerous maneuver possible. When you have no defenses, attack. That's called foreshadowing, just so we're on the same page. Shortly after this, he winds up getting malaria, gets hospitalized with a fever of 105 degrees. While he is in the hospital, his unit attacks and takes the city of Palermo. He recovers and rejoins his unit by September of 1943, just in time for Operation Avalanche, the invasion of Salerno. Fights through September, fights through October. In October, he ends up getting promoted to sergeant, both because he deserves it, but also because his unit is losing so many men. During the following months, Murphy volunteers to lead conversion and capture patrols, basically going out at night, sneaking around and capturing German soldiers, bringing them back so they can be interrogated for intel. And Audie Murphy excels at this. The men that went with him basically alluded to the fact that he had superhuman senses and could smell Germans in the dark from the type of tobacco they smoked. And by January of 1944, he ends up getting hospitalized with malaria again. While he's in the hospital, his unit makes an amphibious landing into Anzio, and they are basically deadlocked on the beachhead in a stalemate. Audie Murphy recovers, comes in with reinforcements because so many of his men have been killed, and he is immediately one of the most senior members in his platoon and is promoted to staff sergeant. So Audie Murphy is now the platoon sergeant. He is the highest ranking non-commissioned officer in charge of this platoon. More or less, he's running the show. During the Battle of Anzio, part of the line that Audie and his men are on get attacked by 20 German tanks. Audie sees him coming. He's inside of this cottage. He calls for artillery fire. The artillery ends up knocking out the lead tank and repelling the rest. That night, off in the distance, Audie...
Okay, real quick. One thing that he does talk about every once in a while that it gets left out a lot in history is the stuff that occurs before D-Day, or the stuff that occurred in World War I before the Americans got there. Like Sabaton has a song called Christmas Truce about the truce of Christmas Day that occurred before America got there. We in America had no idea that ever happened until I saw a song from Sabaton, a Swedish metal band that talks about historical military history. But one thing that the Fat Electrician is talking about, but not really saying, is we all know about D-Day. And to us, a lot of people think, and I don't know why Americans think this way, they really think that America only fought in World War II starting in D-Day and moving forward. Thousands of Americans died in North Africa way before D-Day. And the invasion of Sicily and Italy from the Mediterranean side going north was some of the bloodiest battles in all of World War II for the Americans in the European theater. Okay, we know about D-Day, we know about Omaha Beach, we know about Utah Beach, we know about the story. We've all seen Saving Private Ryan, we've all seen Band of Brothers, and I think those are the two aspects that are really dramatized by historical features, but we don't do a lot of storytelling about the struggles in Italy. Italy was the fortress that France and Belgium were not. In Italy, you weren't just fighting the Germans and the Italians. You were fighting the terrain. In Italy, the advantage is always to the occupier, the defender, because of the mountainous areas, the small passes to get places through different terrain. There's just no, you could go into France and go across hedgerows of large fields, just move massive amounts of armor, troops, and everything else. In Italy, you got to go through one mountain pass. And the Germans and Italians know you have to go there. They're in a fortress at the top of the mountain looking down at you, just dropping stuff. So they don't talk about a lot of the intensity of the Italian and Sicily campaigns and how bloody it was. Whereas they talk about the Battle of the Bulge and the 101st Airborne being surrounded and the Argonne Forest and all that. And that's important to talk about. But there were more stalemates from one town to another in Italy that aren't talked about a lot. Now, he does have a video about the Japanese American units that were used in Italy, and those units were incredibly powerful, incredibly resilient, incredibly savage, and incredibly successful. But we don't hear about them as much in American pop culture, and we should. It's great to have movies about Midway. It's great to have movies about the Battle of the Bulge and D-Day. And those are very specific things that need to be talked about. But if I had not seen Patton, I would never have even known about the invasion of Sicily or the stuff about North Africa. And the stories about the mainland Italian peninsula and going up the Italian peninsula towards Switzerland, it's some of the highest casualties we had during World War II in the European theater. And we don't talk enough about it. So I think it's awesome that Fat Electrician does bring light to those stories, especially those units that he talks about in some of his other videos, because most Americans have no idea. They think it's Pearl Harbor, Midway, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, atomic bombs. They don't even talk about Indochina. They don't talk about the different stuff in Manchuria. Those stories get left out. And just like that, they talk about D-Day, the Battle of the Bulge, the race to Berlin, the Russians coming from the other side, and then they talk about the concentration camps. They follow that Band of Brothers line, but they forget about North Africa, Sicily, and Italy, and the things in Greece. And there's other places that were super historically important to that conflict we don't talk about. I wish they did more. And if you're interested in finding out more about these people, when you hear about Audie Murphy, or you hear about the Japanese American units in Italy, and you hear about these stories, do deep dives. Some really amazing stories out there. And it's super historically important that we understand the unsung heroes, the men and women who died and the civilians who died, and nobody even knows about it. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you, Fat Electrician, for talking about the things that people don't even know about.
He can hear Germans working on this tank out in the darkness, so Audie leads a patrol out. And when I say leads, I don't mean he took some guys with him. I mean he grabbed some dudes and he would advance 50 yards
all these heroes
and then
do
wave
that.
his men to follow him after the fact. Literally leading from the front the entire way. He gets his men to about 100 yards from the tank, orders them to stay put as he advances by himself, gets within about 15 yards of the tank and has 2 Molotov cocktails with him, tries to throw them at the tank, but they fail to ignite it.
I really thought that would work.
From here, he's like, okay, fuck it, runs up to the tank, climbs on top, the hatch is open, there's presumably Germans inside.
This is the part of Fury, the movie about War Daddy, the tank Fury. This is the part where the end of the movie is not about the historical character, but this is the Audie Murphy part.
working on it, drops a grenade inside of it, and then starts running back the other direction. This obviously alerts the Germans in the area. They start firing towards Audie. His men 100 yards back start returning fire. He gets a safe distance away from the tank and then fires 6 rifle grenades into the treads, completely disabling it. Then, using a ditch for cover, he makes his way back to his men and they head back to their line. For this, Audie Murphy earns the Bronze Star with V device, his first major medal. Fast forward May 1944, he fights in the Second Battle of Cisterna, where he earns the Combat Infantry Badge. From there, his unit goes into Rome, and it's what you see in the movies. Everybody's celebrating, throwing flowers. You know, the soldiers are here to save us from the evil Nazis. You've all seen the movies. While most of the rest of the men are partying and celebrating and relaxing with the locals, taking some time off, Audie Murphy isn't. He knows if he's going to make it back home to take care of his siblings, he's got to make it through the war first. Yep. So he spends all of his free time practicing and getting better at becoming a forward observer, the skills necessary to call in accurate artillery fire. After Rome, his unit is sent to Naples, where they stage and get ready to partake in Operation Dragoon, also referred to as the Forgotten D-Day. It is a massive amphibious landing into southern France. It was actually supposed to take place 2 months prior on D-Day, but due to supplies and resources, they weren't able to. So Murphy and his platoon make this amphibious landing. They press inland. They're coming through all these pine trees, and then they come to the tree line, and there's a vineyard with a big hill on the other side. As soon as they hit this vineyard, they start taking German machine gun fire from up on top of the hill. In his squad, Audie's got 1 guy dead, 1 guy wounded. Him and the rest of the squad are pinned down, and the rest of the platoon is back in the tree line. As soon as they hunker down, the German machine gun fire stops, and then as soon as they go to try to move, the Germans start shooting at him again. After about 20 minutes, Audie Murphy says fuck it and rushes the hill by himself. He said that because the Germans had the high ground and they were manning machine guns, they had to kind of look up so they could see downward where they were shooting, and every time he would see the white of their foreheads, that's what he would fire at. He wound up killing 2 Germans. During this firefight, he runs out of carbine ammunition, so he runs back straight past his men to the wood line, grabs a light machine gun from one of the machine gunning crews, and brings it back to his previous position. From here, he gets in a machine gun fight, killing 2 more Germans and wounding a 3rd. Runs out of ammunition again. His men are providing covering fire. He runs back to the tree line, picks up a carbine and more ammunition, and goes back to his position, and this time his best friend Lottie Tipton goes with him. They advance up the hill bounding, so Lottie Tipton's providing covering fire while Audie Murphy moves forward. Audie Murphy gets a little bit ahead. He does covering fire for Lottie Tipton to advance, and they keep doing this all the way up the hill till they make it to one of the machine gun positions. They end up destroying it with grenades. After Lottie Tipton hits the machine gun position with a grenade, they end up raising a white...
A lot of the movies that you see, even Saving Private Ryan, they do historical events, but a lot of the personal events that you see, for Band of Brothers, okay, episode 2, where they actually land D-Day, then the next day they do that assault on the machine gun position. That is actually what happened, so much so that it's a historical fact that it's still talked about in the Army training manuals of how to do a assault on a fixed machine gun position to this day. But there are different things in these movies that are taken from these historical accounts of these incredible stories of heroes. The 2 soldiers covering each other, covering fire, get into position, destroy the position with hand grenades is a common technique used in the past because it's a proper assault technique. But because it's part of history, you'll see a lot of times in movies where they'll insert something that comes from Audie Murphy. It comes from Sergeant York. It comes from different people, their stories of heroism, and it's great for the movie. And they'll add it to the movie even though it didn't happen in the movie. Happens a lot, and I'm okay with it because it just makes good movie, you know?
Flag and trying to surrender. At which point, Lottie Tipton stands up to accept their surrender and is immediately shot straight through the heart. They were lying. At this point, Audie said, a demon entered his body as he rushed to the position the remaining 40 yards by himself, completely cleared it, took the German machine gun that was still operable, and rushed 2 more German machine gun nests, hip firing, destroying both of them. After completely clearing the rest of the hill by himself, he goes back to Lottie Tipton's body and just holds him and bawls. And his men said it was the only time they'd ever seen him cry. For his actions on that day, he was credited with killing 6 Germans, wounding 2 others, and capturing 11 more, earning the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest medal beneath the Medal of Honor. From here on out, Audie Murphy's absolutely pissed. He goes on a complete rampage. If he wasn't already the go-to problem solver for his unit, he was now. If they're pinned down by sniper fire, pinned down by machine gun fire, there's a fucking noise in the attic, you're scared of the dark, everybody calls Audie Murphy. He shows up and he handles the issue. During this time, he gets the Purple Heart for getting blown up by a mortar, but refuses to get medevaced. From here, his unit continues to advance into France through the Vosges Mountains, and they come across the Clary Valley. The unit's options are pretty much climb a fucking mountain or go through the valley. Obviously, they're going through the valley.
Yeah.
The Germans are set up in there with snipers and machine guns all over the fucking place, and every time they try to push forward into it, they end up getting repelled, and this goes on for days. So, unit's got a problem. Obviously, we're gonna call up Captain America with his plot armor. Audie Murphy volunteers to lead a recon squad out there to figure out what's going on. As him and his men are getting ready to step off, Colonel Pollock, the battalion commander, shows up. So, like, his boss's boss shows up trying to figure out what the holdup is, and he decides he's gonna go out with Audie Murphy. And this is on October 2nd, 1944. So they go out, they wind up stumbling across the German machine gun position, get ambushed, everybody hits the dirt, they're pinned down. Sure enough, Audie Murphy stands up, yells at everybody else to stay down, he's gonna handle this shit. Then, while the colonel, his boss's boss, is watching, he advances on the enemy machine gun position by himself while he's actively getting shot at, yet somehow not getting hit, I guess because he's a small target. Gets close enough to throw a grenade into the German machine gun position, and before the grenade can detonate, he switches to his carbine and shoots two, then the grenade blows up. He then hits the position with two more grenades, killing a total of 4 Germans, injuring 3, and the 8th German takes off running, and Audie Murphy drops him. He then comes walking back to his men and Colonel Pollock, carrying the German machine gun with him, which is the most gangster shit I've ever heard in my entire life. He is then awarded the Silver Star. 3 days later, October 5th, 1944, they're still making their way through this valley. They get ambushed again by German machine gun fire. The radio guy right next to Audie Murphy gets struck and killed. Audie Murphy grabs the radio, hits the dirt, and starts low crawling towards the gunfire. He can't even see where it's coming from yet. He yells back to his men to dig in as he continues low crawling forward inch by inch. He eventually ends up spotting 2 German snipers, grabs his carbine, fires, takes out both of them. From here, he's got eyes on the German positions and then uses a radio to call in mortar fire on all these different positions for over an hour by himself. During that hour, he
Okay, so far what you're saying is he's done the heroic medal award winning actions of about 200 guys. And it's yeah. That's why he's Captain America.
utilize the skills that he honed back in Rome to walk the mortar fire directly into the German positions, and if the Germans tried to retreat, Audie and the men to his rear would pick them off. By the time Audie had cleared all the positions with mortar fire, 15 Germans were dead and another 35 were wounded, and Audie Murphy would get his second Silver Star in the span of 3 days. Upon hearing about this, presumably Colonel Pollock calls him into his office, his tent, whatever you want to call it, and is like, so you're gonna go ahead and get promoted, you're gonna get commissioned, you're gonna be an officer now. And Audie Murphy actually rejects the commissioned officer. Remember, he dropped out of school when he was 13 years old. He's not that great at reading and writing, and officers have a huge amount of responsibility in writing down and documenting the actions of their soldiers, and he doesn't feel like he's gonna do a very good job at that, so he just politely declines. He's happy to keep doing exactly what he's doing. To which Colonel Pollock replies, no, you're fucking Captain America. You're going to be a commissioned officer so you can lead these men. I'll have somebody else do the paperwork for you. Don't worry about it. So now Audie Murphy is a lieutenant. October 26th, Audie Murphy leading from the front per usual. He ends up getting hit by enemy sniper fire. Somehow they found a hole in the plot armor and it strikes him directly in the ass. Audie Murphy falls to the ground. His helmet rolls off next to him. He doesn't really know what's going on yet. And then all of a sudden, he's looking to see where that gunfire came from, doesn't even realize he's shot yet, and the helmet next to him gets shot by the enemy sniper. Audie Murphy sees the muzzle flash, returns fire, eliminates the enemy sniper. At this point, he realizes he's been shot. His men come running up asking if he's okay, probably scared shitless, like, if Audie Murphy goes down, none of us stand a chance. To which Audie Murphy replies, I'll be damned, I've been shot right in the ass.
It was a bullet, wasn't it?
It right in the
Hit me
buttocks.
directly in the buttocks. They said it was $1 million wound.
I ain't
but
seen a dollar of that money.
the Army must keep that money because I still ain't seen a nickel of that $1 million.
So Audie Murphy gets taken to the aid station. He winds up getting gangrene in this gunshot.
Yeah, by the way, a lot of the stuff in Forrest Gump is, yeah. There's things he's telling me about Audie Murphy right now, these little tidbits of things that Audie Murphy did throughout these months of deployment in the European theater, that I've heard those stories. I didn't know it was Audie Murphy. You hear about stories. Oh, one time there was a soldier and blah, 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 and a helmet and everything he's saying about Audie Murphy I've heard before. I didn't know it was Audie Murphy. Like, I just thought it was some soldier. So those stories do go around. Just didn't know it was all being done by one guy. Just saying.
Wound, and gangrene is like dead necrotic tissue.
Yeah.
The blood supply isn't there and the tissue just dies and gets rotten and infected. And typically if you get it on like a foot or an arm, they just have to amputate it. But because this is an ass cheek and you can't really amputate an ass cheek, they just have to cut out the dead necrotic flesh and pump him full of penicillin and hope he's okay. He winds up in a French hospital. They end up cutting 5 pounds of flesh off of Audie Murphy while they're just pumping him full of penicillin. Bear in mind, the dude's only 112 pounds, and that was before he was running through the mountains in France fighting in combat every day, so he's probably much less than that at this point. This guy doesn't have 5 pounds worth of ass to lose. That's like 5% of his body weight.
Ice cream.
Regardless, he's in the hospital, he's flirting with all the nurses. The nurses think that he's just this adorable baby-faced little cutie, and then all the other soldiers are telling the nurses like, ma'am, that's fucking Audie Murphy. That's like the deadliest soldier we have, and everybody's just shocked that this baby-faced 19-year-old is like the biggest badass on the planet. He actually winds up proposing to one of the nurses at this point, and despite his charm and baby face and boyish good looks and his reputation of being a complete badass, she declines.
Wow. So he's not batting 1,000. Wow. So he sucks at one thing. Thank God, because I was starting to worry. Here we go.
So after 2 months of battling gangrene and flirting with nurses, Audie Murphy makes a recovery, or at least enough of a recovery to demand to be sent back out with his men. He rejoins his men on January 14th, 1945, and his unit is going to be going into the Colmar Pocket, one of the last German strongholds on the French side of the Rhine. Intel says that there are 9 German divisions there, 50,000 men. On January 20th, his unit moves in. They don't make any headway because they need tanks to be able to punch through this German line. So they wait for the tanks to show up. They end up pushing in on January 25th. On January 26th, Audie Murphy and the other 2 officers in his platoon are all hit with enemy mortar fire. The other 2 officers are killed, and Audie Murphy is peppered from his waist down. Being the only surviving officer, he refuses evacuation, and he is now acting commander of the entire company. He leads his company to right outside the town of Holtz, where they get ready to launch an attack. They are staged.
Why are you the CEO of our company? Why are you the commanding officer? Oh, because I have plot armor and no one else does, so everyone else is dead. Okay. Sounds good.
Up right along this wood line. It's a wood line, a dirt road, then a big open field with the town off in the distance. From here, they start staging up, getting ready to make this attack, but they can't do it yet because they're waiting for reinforcements to show up because they need more men. And while that's going on, everybody is just freezing their ass off. It's January, they're living outside, there's snow all over the ground, dudes are getting up, walking around, just trying to stay warm. It sucks. Murphy's got his infantry, and then he also has 2 M10 tank destroyers, so that morning he starts maneuvering them into the right position to be able to support this attack, and then more time goes on, dudes are walking around trying to stay warm, everybody's just biding their time, and by 2 o'clock, 6 German tanks come rolling up towards their position with 250 infantry Germans behind them. Murphy immediately calls for artillery, but the German artillery gets there first, striking one of the M10 tank destroyers, killing 2 crew members and setting it on fire. The other M10 tank destroyers firing at the German tanks, and it's hitting them, but it's not enough to penetrate the German armor, and the shells are just ricocheting off. At this point, he knows they're fucked. There's nothing they can do to these German tanks, so he orders all of his men to fall back into the wood line, as well as the other M10 tank destroyer. While everybody scrambles, Audie Murphy grabs his field telephone, runs over to the first M10 tank destroyer, the one that's on fire, climbs on top of it, pulls the dead lieutenant out of the hatch, sets him aside as he mans a 50 caliber machine gun and his field telephone.
All right, so this is the part that we've seen in the movie Fury where the stories get crossed. Okay, fair enough.
Telephone on top. He begins strafing the German advance with 50 caliber machine gun fire. They're about 200 yards away, while he's also operating the field telephone, calling in for more artillery. As it's getting closer and closer, artillery asks how close they are to his position, and he famously replies, "Just hold the phone, I'll let you talk to the bastards."
Hold.
This is George Peterson, Chicago Police. If you don't get that joke, I can't help you.
While that's going on, the other M10 tank destroyer trying to back up ends up backing up into a ditch, getting stuck with the gun at a useless angle, so now that's out too. So now it is just Murphy standing on top of a flaming M10 tank destroyer that could blow up at any minute if the fuel or the ammunition ignites.
What happened? I don't know, it just didn't explode. That's weird.
And Audie Murphy is up there engaging the enemy by himself for over an hour. He said the only thing that he was aware of at the time was that the smoke billowing out of the M10 he was standing on was providing a good smoke screen, and that this was the first time in 3 days that his feet were warm. You gotta look for the silver linings. Now, during the course of this 60-minute battle, his M10 tank destroyer gets struck by German shells 2 more times, and somehow it still doesn't blow up, but he does take a ton of shrapnel into one of his legs.
Huh? I really thought that one was gonna explode.
But Audie Murphy doesn't quit, so he just keeps standing on top of a flaming tank destroyer, engaging the enemy by himself, and eventually the Germans had sent 12 infantry troops down an irrigation ditch that was near his M10, and they jumped out attempting to flank him from 10 yards away. He catches them just in time, swings the 50 cal over, and eliminates all 12 German infantry. As he runs out of ammunition for the 50 cal, he calls in the final artillery barrage in on his position as he jumps down off the M10 with a wounded leg and runs back into the tree line and starts reorganizing his men to launch a counterattack. As he's running away, the M10 finally blows up because the fuel or the ammunition ignited right before the artillery barrage hits.
That's what exploded? Holy shit, that was crazy.
Okay, could you imagine being one of this guy's soldiers? You just watched him fight 250 dudes and 6 tanks by himself for a fucking hour with no commercials, and then as he runs out of ammo and jumps off the flaming tank, it blows up as he's walking towards you.
Cool guys don't look at explosions. They blow things up and then walk away.
Needless.
Yeah, and also shock waves, blast waves, compression, all that stuff does not affect heroes, by the way. I don't know if you know that. So if you have plot armor, overcompression, things that make explosives dangerous to the human body. I mean, shrapnel's dangerous, don't get me wrong, but just overcompression can cause someone to literally be killed if you're too close. Plot armor negates that, by the way.
To say everybody was pretty pumped to follow that motherfucker into battle. They launch a counterattack and push the Germans all the way back. After the Germans start retreating, he finally stops in the middle of the field for medical assistance, but still refuses to get evacuated.
I could do this all day.
For this, he was awarded the Medal of Honor with the citation crediting him with approximately 50 kills. However, the eyewitness accounts of the men that were there that day said that between his 50 caliber fire and the artillery strikes that he was calling in, it was in excess of 100.
Jesus.
In the following days in the Colmar pocket, the German lines are starting to collapse. Things are starting to move a lot faster. When they're coming up on German units, they're just starting to surrender. So as Audie Murphy and his company are advancing, they end up coming up on some Germans that are exhausted. They don't even put up a fight. They're just like, fucking, we give up. Whatever. They surrender. And as they're starting to, take away their weapons, get everything sorted out, 3 German tanks pull out of the wood line across the field with a bunch of infantry behind them.
Oh, you gotta be shitting me.
And at this point, I can only assume Audie Murphy's like, I can't do this shit again. I already played this level. I don't want to play it again. As the tanks start advancing towards them, they turn onto the road. They're not spotted yet, but they're gonna be in a second. And Audie Murphy's like, if one of these Germans yells something in German, or if they see us, we're completely fucked.
Yeah.
What do we do? And he very quickly grabs one of the Germans' helmets and puts it on his head and has his men do the same. They throw the Germans down on the ground, point their guns at him, basically saying, shut the fuck up, as they wave to the tanks as they roll down the road.
Just smile and wave, boys. Smile and wave.
And luckily for the Germans, it worked. I have no idea how he would have pulled a win out of that situation, but at this point, I'm fairly confident he would have, because let's face it, the man's the main character.
Yeah.
By February 8th, 1945, the Colmar pocket collapses completely, and Audie and his men are sent to Paris for some R&R. While there, Audie Murphy is informed that he will be receiving the Medal of Honor and not be going back into frontline combat because he's the most decorated soldier of World War II at this point.
By the way, World War II flying aces in the Pacific, if you want a Silver Star, things of that nature, when you did heroic deeds, there was 2 battles going on. There was the I keep doing that. Okay. Sorry. There were 2 big things going on during World War II. There was the actual physical combat in theater. Then there was another war to pay for it all. To invade Europe to defend the Pacific cost billions of dollars that the US government didn't have. So they needed the population of the United States to buy war bonds. In other words, you're buying a bond, giving your money to the government, saying that when we win this war, you're going to get your money back. And then some, right? It's a bond. But to convince people to... There's two ways to convince people to buy war bonds and support the government in their war effort. Number one, you could negatively promote it, saying, look at all the people we're losing. Look at all the death. If we don't buy bonds, if you don't support, we'll lose more men. They did do that in the casualty reports and the newsreels sometimes. But then they did the other way of doing it, which was to promote heroes. So they would take Guadalcanal Marine fighter pilot aces, or McCluskey from Midway, or different heroes of battles, both pilots and soldiers, like Bassione. After Guadalcanal, when he won his Medal of Honor, they put him on a war bond tour. Here he is. They'd march him out, kind of like the Steve Rogers Captain America. Literally put him out there. I'm Captain America, buy war bonds. It was literally like that. So your best soldiers would get pulled off the line because the military and the US government realized he's one person that if he keeps going, he's eventually going to get killed. And then what do we do? While he's a hero, let's put him on the road, put him in front of people in every single town, down a line on a bus, and try to earn money to pay for more. That happened all the time. It's an amazing part of World War II that people don't realize. There was a battle on the field of war, bullets, artillery shells, fire, explosions, death, dismemberment, that war. Then there was the war to pay for it all back home. Both were equal because without one, you can't have the other. It's a very interesting plot.
Going back into frontline combat because he's the most decorated soldier of World War II at this point, and they can't risk losing him. So for the rest of the war, he's going to serve as the liaison officer for the battalion. Basically, they're giving him a bullshit job trying to keep him safe and out of combat. He knows that, and he hates it the entire time. And it still does not stop him that every time he hears his company's having an issue, he takes his Jeep to the front lines under the pretenses of, I'm going to go check the lines to investigate stuff as the liaison guy. And then he goes out there and leads his men in combat anyways. And that's pretty much what goes on until World War II comes to an end. After that, he had a big ceremony where he was formally awarded the Medal of Honor. From there, he goes back home and there is an enormous parade. He's a national celebrity. He's on the cover of Time magazine. Everybody knows who he is. He is the most decorated man of World War II. And to be completely honest, he doesn't really care for it. He doesn't think that he's anything special. He doesn't like being a star. He doesn't like all the fame. He just kind of wants to be a normal guy. And it's partially just because of who he is as a person, but also because for the rest of his life, he suffers from survivor's guilt and severe PTSD. Despite that, when he's offered the opportunity to act in Hollywood in a bunch of Western movies and to star in his own film about his exploits in World War II, he takes the job not because he wants to be rich and famous, but because he needs the money to take care of his siblings. And when he gets that first big check, the first thing he does is he goes to his older sister, who is now a married woman with kids of her own, and says, look, I will buy you and your husband this big, nice house if you're willing to adopt our 5 younger siblings and raise them as your own. And she takes him up on that offer, and he does exactly that. From here, Audie continues to get more rich and more famous. He's in all kinds of movies. His movie To Hell and Back was one of the most popular movies of its time, and despite that, he still suffers from this survival guilt and PTSD. It ends up ruining his marriage. He has to take pills just so he can sleep at night. He sleeps with a gun under his pillow. It leads to a gambling addiction. It's rough, and at this point in time, nobody really recognized PTSD, and there wasn't much help, if any help, that he could get. But
World War II, the Korean War, well, actually World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and Vietnam. These were wars where technology and the art of killing and massive chaos and trauma to soldiers far out surpassed what the human psyche could accept. Before World War I, wars were almost contested. Armies would line up, they would form up into columns and ranks, they would line up, they would shoot volleys at each other. when the generals realized, okay, enough people have died, we're going to stop the battle. I kid you not. In World War I, we became so good, technology caught up with the advent of the machine gun and the tank and the airplane, that the ease upon which we could cause massive death and destruction to humans caused such a scenario that the human psyche could not process the amount of chaos and trauma of battle. So starting in World War I, the term shell shock came out, and it progressed all the way through the Gulf War, the first Gulf War in the 1990s, when we started to realize that the pace of battle, the op-tempo, the wanton death, the chaos of it all, the high stress could cause irreparable psychological damage as well as physical damage. So my father, coming out of Vietnam, when I was 1 year old, my mother had to flee my father. Love my dad. Okay? Not saying he was a horrible person, but when he came back from Vietnam, he could not live in the normal world because his psyche had been scarred and reprogrammed to survive in the chaos of Vietnam, where if you hear a noise in the middle of the night, if you don't have a gun locked and loaded and you're not shooting at the shadow that came in your hooch, you're probably dead. Those things occurred, and those Vietnam vets came back with that. And you see the story that Sylvester Stallone tells with John Rambo, where he comes back from Vietnam. He's fine as long as he's not provoked, or if you put him in that scenario where the everyday situations of society cause him to have wartime instinctual actions or reactions, it's a struggle. So, and Fat Electrician and his friends know this better than any of us, because nowadays you have so many military veterans, even from the last 25 years, since 9/11, where these veterans, that op-tempo, the psychological conditions upon which they lived and existed and had to survive, when they come back to the US or they come back home, it's hard to come out of that. It's almost impossible. I'm fortunate that in my time, I did not have that occur. Like when I was deployed to Kosovo, Bosnia-Herzegovina for peacekeeping, just the sheer detriment of the children, the refugees, the homeless kids, the orphans, scarred me. And while there wasn't even combat. So I can't even imagine the level upon which all this occurred. Now remember, this is not some clerk typist working in the headquarters in Fairfax, Virginia during World War II. This is Audie freaking Murphy. Not only has he been in combat, but he's been in so much combat, and he has plot armor, which means stuff that would normally happen to an injured, let's say a soldier goes out into the field, he gets injured in battle, he goes home, okay, your leg is totally messed up, you can't really walk well, so you're discharged, you're gonna have medically discharged, you're gonna go home. That's from one encounter. Audie Murphy survived dozens, hundreds of actions, and he took that with him through his life, plus the need that existed before he became a soldier. Remember, he grew up in abject poverty, fight to survive, hunt to survive, mom dies, supporting all of his siblings. So even after everything he survives, he has to come home and then still be the man of his family. These stories are not just about the intense events that makes these people heroes in history, but the lives they live before and the lives they live after. And it's one of the things that the Fat Electrician does that is so important. It's not just what we see in the movies. He'll tell you how this kid grew up in the middle of the Depression, becomes an icon of US history, and what happens after. That's the stuff that makes it special. Yeah, he's funny. Yeah, he's hilarious. Yeah, it's well done and well researched, but I think it's the picture before and the picture after that he shares that's the most important. Let's finish it out.
Audie Murphy doesn't quit, so he did what is, in my opinion, the coolest and potentially the bravest thing that he did in his entire life. He spoke out about it and he told the truth. He spoke out about the fact that he struggled with PTSD and criticized the government for not providing veterans that came back home with help after the war, which I can't stress to you enough is incredible, because he easily could have said, nope, never lost an ounce of sleep in my entire life. I'm the biggest badass on the planet. Everybody should look up to me. I'm literally Captain America. But he didn't. He told the truth. He told everybody what his struggles were, and in doing so, he not only brought attention to the fact that this is an issue that needs to get worked on, but he also made it okay for everybody else to talk about it. Because now, if Audie Murphy, the most decorated man of World War II, one of the biggest badasses of all time, can come out and say, hey, I struggle with this too, there's no shame in anybody else saying that they struggle with it also. Unfortunately, Audie Murphy would pass away fairly young at the age of 46 in 1971. The pilot of the plane that he was on was not qualified to be flying that particular aircraft, and he was also not qualified to be flying in the inclement weather that they were experiencing that day on May 28th. And because of that, the plane would ultimately crash, killing everyone on board. Audie Murphy's death was sudden and tragic, and due to his fame and notoriety in the world, a lot of people speculated with conspiracy theories that he was either assassinated by the mob because later in life he was a confidential FBI informant due to his Hollywood connections and his connections related to his gambling addiction. Other people also speculated that he was silenced by the United States government for being one of the first big people to speak out about PTSD. I don't necessarily believe either of those, but they were popular conspiracy theories at the time, and if you research into it, you'll find them. Audie Murphy is buried in Arlington National Cemetery, and he's the second most visited grave there behind JFK. Allegedly, Audie Murphy's family was given the opportunity to have Audie buried with a monument or a tomb in Arlington National Cemetery near the tomb of the unknown soldier, but they declined. They were then offered for him to have a gold leaf inlay in his tombstone because he was a Medal of Honor recipient, which they also declined, because his family knew that Audie Murphy would have wanted a normal grave just like everybody else. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch over at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang out.
All right, so do that. Go to thefatelectrician.com. And also do that whole delete me thing, because you know it's all part of it. So there you go. My first ever reaction to the Fat Electrician. It's long because the video is long that he does, and I have a tendency to stop and talk too. So there you go. I appreciate everything he does. I think everything that Nick does is incredible. It's similar to Sabaton. You know, we talk about Sabaton, the band from Sweden that does all these amazing videos and music about historical military figures and heroes in history from all different aspects from a neutral perspective. The Fat Electrician does the same thing, but in YouTube using comedy, great research, and he's a great orator. He really knows how to tell a story. So there you go. Yep. Now what? Oh yeah, this is where you leave. Bye. Thanks for watching, everybody. And if you enjoyed this video, give us a like. It really helps the channel grow. Also, if you want to subscribe, right over there. A big thank you to all my Patreons out there for everything you do. And if you want more content like this, check them out above. Remember, love one another, take care of each other. We're all stuck on this smoke ball together. We'll see you later.